What's going on, y'all? Got a video today about a lot of things, mainly about art and preservation and how people view it, how I view it, how I view how this a lot of this stuff that's going on, what it how it kind of comes to me, uh, and how I process it. And a lot of this has been stuff I've been kind of chewing on for a while, but it's coming to a head now with the whole, PlayStation announcing that they're no longer going to be making physical games in a couple years, beginning of 2028 to be exact, in January, and how the loud vocal minority and the AR minority are doing what they do, and fear mongering and poisoning the well and forgetting the plot about what this is all about. So, number one, shout out to Sony for having the courage to usher in the new world about what this truly is. They've always kind of been the scapegoats of the gaming industry. What I'm saying? Whenever they do anything remotely wrong, they're the worst things ever. They're the worst people ever. And all the other companies, especially Nintendo, who are constantly doing things to make gamers' life more difficult, they get a pass every time. Like, don't get me started on the amiibo and how they hide content within them, and they're so hard to get a hold of. And no one gives them shit for the amiibo. It's a game called Codename Steam that has developed by IS Intelligence Systems. I think the same people who made Fire Emblem series. It's on the 3DS. And they hide 4 Fire Emblem characters, playable characters, that have voice lines and everything through amiibos in that game. You cannot access them without that. You know what I'm saying? So no one really cares about that. Even though Codename Steam's a very good game, definitely suggest you get it. By any means necessary. It's very fun. It's different than Fire Emblem, but it's also in the same range as that. But yeah, people don't really talk about that or complain about how, hey, that's not fair, which is not even remotely fair. That you can't even access those 4 Fire Emblem characters any other way other than buying those amiibos. That's a different story about like what Nintendo really is and how I don't really like them as a whole as a company. Never really been a whole fan of them. Been a fan of a lot of their developers, but not them as a company. They are very, very much ran by the Yakuza, as most things are in Japan, and most things in life is ran by organized crime. But different story, different video. But people are just they're complaining, they're fear mongering about how this anti-consumer. That's all they truly care about. That's all these people really are, consumers. They're not really artists. They're not really people who want to play games to really feel something or to better themselves as people. They just want to consume. That's it. And they want to have the right to consume. They want to have this money, because I get it, that people are very resentful about, going to work and spending all this time at work or whatever to pay their bills. So the reward they get from working, they want to be able to spend it on stuff. So I get that. One of the things they want to spend their money on is on video games. I get that. One of the highest grossing industries in the world. So I understand that. When people don't like change, it's very innate to humans that we always want to fight things that are honestly very, very good for us in the long term and in the short term. But they're making up all these excuses about and the main one that I have a beef with is video game or game preservation. We've seen this with all art forms. We've seen this with physical art pieces. Like people want to keep that original canvas alive, even though you can just take a picture of it. You can get all the same effects, most of the same effects, from a picture of an art piece versus it being there. It's like a what do you call it? Placebo effect of it physically being there. Having the physical Mona Lisa in your living room versus having like a picture of it, on your wallpaper or whatever, on your phone. Apparently that physical one is just going to give you so many more benefits than just having it in any other medium. And obviously with music, what I'm saying, I used to collect small. I tried to collect records, try to get a record player. Couldn't get that going. Maybe one day I'll get it, but record players, they do play music differently, but we eventually moved over into digital, and that's been okay. You know, music has survived. Same thing with movies. You know what I'm saying? That was film. It wasn't digital. It was made with film, and it was made a certain type of way with film. And film definitely has its own lane. You know, I appreciate film, but at the same time, moving to digital, moving digitally, being able to view films and TV shows digitally on the internet, overall it's for the best, because you know what it does? It preserves a whole lot of those films and shows. It keeps them alive longer than physical. It's easier to get rid of something physically than it is digitally. That's kind of where I'm getting at with video games. You know, people are honestly lying about saying video game preservation is done with physical games. It's done with digital. You know what I'm saying? Video games are made on computers. They're not made out in the wild. You know what I'm saying? They're not made physically. You know what I'm saying? With tools, and they put the tools out here in the world, out in the physical world, and put on digitally. No, they were always made on computers, and the only reason why they made them physical is to sell them to people. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't necessarily the easiest way to distribute games, honestly, but it was easier for them to make money off of it. You know, that was basically it. These artists, wanted to make money off of their art, and that's why they made physical games. It wasn't, for our benefit. It wasn't to make sure that we had a way to play their games. There are ways for us to play their games to keep it digitally, you know what I'm saying, keep it on the computer. But they made them physical, and it was a beautiful thing, distributed them all over the world, places that don't have computers were able to play video games. And that was a beautiful, beautiful, noble thing. But, all good things must come to an end. And now it's not as good as it used to be, you know what I'm saying? The trend is digital, because it's just easier for everyone, especially the person playing the game, to have games to be digital, versus them being physical. Because, look at the used game market, look at the retro game market. That was a market that I was in, had hundreds of physical games, and the prices of them are just skyrocketing. You know what I'm saying? They're getting so out of hand, and you just want to get that little, nostalgia trip you had as a kid. A lot of times, play games that you haven't played in a while, play games you always wanted to play, you never got a chance to. And physically, it's becoming so hard because so many of these games, only so many of them. You know what I'm saying? Like the game that I'm playing right now on Dolphin Emulator is Path of Radiance, Fire Emblem. That game only has so many physical releases, and there's only so many GameCubes and Wii out there. And there's a lot of Wiis. There's only so many GameCubes out there. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not how you preserve games. It's not how you preserve anything. It's by putting them on one thing and keeping them there forever. You preserve it by making it digital, and thank God someone made it digital, because Nintendo never truly did until recently. And even then, you have to pay all these subscription services to play these GameCube games by Nintendo. That's the only way to legitimately, legally, let's not call it legit, let's call it legally, play these games is through their subscription service. And no one's bitching at Nintendo for that. I've seen very few people getting mad at Nintendo for gatekeeping all of these services that should be free for everyone. These games are ancient, you know what I'm saying? And that's why, digital, that's why emulating is becoming so popular. ROMs and emulators are becoming so popular. That's, like I said, that's the true way that you preserve games, is putting them on the internet and putting them on your phone. I have hundreds of games on my phone, I have hundreds of games on my Vita, I have hundreds of games on my 3DS that I got illegally, through ROMs in it, and I'm preserving them. You know what I'm saying? I'm playing games I never really thought I would have ever played. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You know what I'm saying? I got a PS2 emulator on my phone, got a GameCube emulator, a DS, a Game Boy Advance emulator on here, and I'm preserving these games. I don't need Nintendo's permission to play Pokemon Yellow when they're making it impossible for me to buy it from them. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing with the GameCube games. I can't own these games. The best I can do from these companies is license them. That's the best I can do, and that's not preservation. Even nothing on Steam that's not preservation. The only one that's doing it is GOG. That's why I'm buying most of my games on PC on GOG. They're the only ones like, hey, we want you actually to preserve them. They don't want you to preserve them. They want you just to license them, and then once they're gone, they have all your money. They don't really care what happens. You know what I'm saying? You know, he knows what I'm talking about. It's kind of how things are. And you know, all this, you know, being mad at Sony and scapegoating them, is like the oldest trick in the book. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. I know there's a company going around acting like, you know, they're doing what Sony isn't doing, which is making more physical games. I wouldn't be surprised if the people there, like some of the people there, are directly related to people who work at Sony or PlayStation. You know, a nephew or niece of an executive. You know what I'm saying? This is a psyop. It's all a smokescreen. You know what I'm saying? It's an older trick in the book. Politicians do it, you know, acting like, oh, this guy, he taxes these people. He goes after these people. Well, she does this and she does that, knowing damn well they're all cool with each other behind the scenes. You know, this is the oldest trick in the book. You know what I'm saying? Companies are constantly doing it. Sony did this with the Xbox when they did the whole "here how you share a game" shit. You know, the video that's going around. They're all cool with each other. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, they're all in the same boat. They're not going against each other. There's no real competition. There's no need for it. There's no need for it. Y'all are gonna buy all this shit regardless. Like I said, you're consumers. You don't care about the art. You don't do this for the love of the game. Literally, you're doing this because you know you're emotionally unregulated or whatever. I'm not gonna make assumptions about who you are as people, but as a whole. But at the same time, and this is not about video game preservation. What they're doing is doing what's best for video game preservation. What we're seeing in the video game industry, in the market, which I don't really care for, but in the video game space, is a lot of emulators, you know what I'm saying? A lot of ROMs, a lot of people who are truly trying to preserve games, you know what I'm saying? Like that's how I'm going to be consuming games from here on out. You know, I'm going to get a Switch 2 again, because I have a lot of Switch 1 and Switch 2 games digitally on Nintendo Space. That's probably going to be one of the last consoles I'm going to buy, not because I'm mad at the companies, but it's just because of at least buy when they're relatively new, I should say, because there's third-party places that can play these games, you know, that can play these games, run them well, you know what I'm saying? There's a whole bunch of these emulators that can play Switch games, play 3DS games, PS3 games, Xbox 60 games, all of them all the way down. We're getting some that's going to be able to play PS4 and Xbox One games. You know what I'm saying? They're not Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Steam don't have a monopoly over these games. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, they're art pieces. Not all of them, but they're art pieces. And then they need to be preserved. They need to be played. They need to be experienced. And people, I say, are remembering what this is about. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with downloading an emulator and a ROM for a game that you know you bought already. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel bad for having God Hand on my phone. You know what I'm saying? I bought it secondhand. I bought it used years ago. I don't have the game anymore, but I had it. And I bought it on the PSN, on the PS3. You know what I'm saying? I've had it in multiple forms. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't need. Sony doesn't care that I have it on my phone. My phone isn't going to burst into flames because I have God Hand on my phone. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't keep the world from not spinning by doing this. But I used to be one of those people like, hey, I don't want to pirate games and it's wrong and stealing is wrong. Like, we're not stealing anything. You know what I'm saying? The vast majority of gamers have put in tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars into this damn industry, feeding so many families, keeping this whole thing running, keeping the lights on. The least they can do is throw us a bone. That's what they're doing, truly. If you look at it from a different perspective, that's why they're allowing these emulators and these ROMs to still exist. That's why you can just look up emulation of a game that came out 10, 15 years ago, download it relatively easily because they know that this is what preservation is. You know what I'm saying? Like, this, all you're doing by doing this is keeping people in the ecosystem of games, because the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and Beta, they aren't playing games the way that we did, millennials and Gen X did, because it's a different world out here. They're playing a couple games of these friend games, these party games, and that's about it. They don't have the same relationship to these first, second, and third party games as we do. The video game industry, as we know it now, kind of So will survive with us. You know what I'm saying? It's going with us. So keeping that in mind, you know what I'm saying, you have to kind of go with the flow, kind of go with nature. And nature is telling us that we don't have to, physical games ain't it anymore. You know, so it was never it to begin with. It was always physical, it was always digital, and we just didn't have the infrastructure, you know what I'm saying? But now we do have the infrastructure, you know what I'm saying? You will be able to, I promise you, next 5 years, be able to buy, a $300 emulator that has a whole bunch of games loaded. We already had those as kids, you know what I'm saying? You saw those knockoff, 501, 301, emulator games. And those games you saw at the dollar store, you know what I'm saying? These things are always been a thing. And they're always going to preserve games, you know what I'm saying? They're becoming more and more legit, having more bells and whistles, you know what I'm saying? The AYN or AI Thor, I forgot what it's called, the 3DS looking one. That thing's ridiculous. The games that you can play on that thing. I'm eventually gonna get that one of these days. I know I have my own 3DS. That thing is insane. When the other one that they have, the little pocket thing or whatever, that thing is wild. The games that can play on it, you know what I'm saying? Reviews on there, the games that can run on it. It's insane, you know what I'm saying? It's absolutely wild. And you can a lot of these systems, you can have your Switch on there, you have your GOG library on there, you have your Switch games on there, you have your Steam library on there. So you can play so many of these newer games, plus having all these retro games on there as well. And there's dozens of them. They're all over the place. You don't have to play these games on Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo platforms anymore. And that's the future of video games. That's how we preserve them, is this way, and not so much the traditional way. It was just there because it was convenient to them and for us. You know what I'm saying? All these people want to pretend like they care about these places that don't have, the internet infrastructure and blame Sony for that. Like they have way more things going on in their lives than way more pressing things going on than being able to download video games. You know what I'm saying? You don't care about these countries. You're just virtual signaling. As usual, what these people do, these virtual signaling. But they're not bad people. No one's bad. No one's wrong in this. It's just people once again, this fear mongering. You got bills to pay, you know what I'm saying? A lot of them are content creators, so you got to make content. A lot of their content is pretty negative. Not all of them, but a lot of them make negative content just to, like I said, fear monger. But it's all a psyop for the people who are truly, about it, people who remember what the plot is, to see through it and to continue down the course. You know what I'm saying? We haven't forgotten the plot. We know what this is about. This is about making sure that games are still being played. And people have the option to continue to play games. That is the only thing that really matters. So at the end of the day, keep playing games. It's one of the greatest inventions in human history of video games. One of the best kept secrets too. That's why so many people hate them, especially women. They hate them so much because they know how great they are. They're amazing. They're amazing ways to play. Because as humans, that's what we do. We love to play. It's one of the best ways to play. Builds empathy, builds compassion, has great music, great visuals, great controls that are really, really cathartic and really kind of give you a feeling that can't be replicated. Very hard to replicate. You know what I'm saying? Everyone loves video games. Very few people want to admit it, but everyone loves video games. That's the reason why I want to get into the industry. That's the reason I know that I'm needed in that industry. It's because I can give people what they need. You know what I'm saying? I have so many great ideas, so many great concepts to make art start to replicate life. So many of these games don't really replicate life very much. They're escapism to make people feel like people that they're not, which is fine. You know what I'm saying? Those games exist. I really want to put things into a perspective and get people back on track. Get people to feel again, get people to be more whole within themselves. And so I know that's what I need to do. And as an artist, but I need to suffer and remember all this stuff. But I'll make a video about that. But yeah, just like all these art forms go through this. You know damn well most of these people who are talking about preserving games and not wanting to pirate them, they pirated movies, and they have a whole bunch of pirated songs on their phones, as we all do. You know what I'm saying? This is kind of what this is. You know what I'm saying? You gotta remember the plot. Artists truly aren't really supposed to be extremely wealthy from their art. You know what I'm saying? You forget why you made that art. That's why so many artists, forget the plot, because they were broke, they were down, destituted, made their art, got famous, and then they stopped suffering. They forgot what got them there. They forgot where they came from. And that's what's going on with gamers right now. We're forgetting where we came from. We were all kind of broke. You know what I'm saying? Either getting games from libraries, getting them from third-party mom and pop shops. So we all did. I had to do it as a kid. You know what I'm saying? I had to sell a bunch of my games, get them all collected, sell like 5 or 6 of them just to get a couple of them at GameStop or a mom and pop shop. You know what I'm saying? We were all there at one point. So let's not forget who we came from now that we're all adults. We have a whole lot of disposable income. We just throw money at things. Let's not forget, the suffering that we went through and why that made playing games so great. You know what I'm saying? So let's get back to the plot. That's kind of why we do these things, and why, even though we aren't very vocal, we know what it is. We know what truly the future of video gaming, of art is digital. It's not the only thing, right? The future is going to be something even better to preserve these things so people can play them 100 years from now. But playing games 100 years from now is not going to be physical. No one's going to have these TVs. No one's going to have the cables and the controllers for all these things. You know this. You all know this. So this is definitely this nature running this course, and people just remembering what this is, and just kind of misdirecting people at the end of the day. But yeah, that's it. Just more yapping about stuff I'm thinking about. So yeah, let's keep this thing going.